Hello, and welcome to the Irish Aesthete. Previously, I'd been speaking about Una Guinness's first marriage and how, after it ended, she had married Dominic, Lord Oranmore and Brown. Here they are in May 1937, a year after their wedding, attending the coronation of George VI. The couple spent much of their time in the west of Ireland, at Dominic's ancestral home, Castlemacgarrett in County Mayo. Alas, after years of neglect, this is what it looks like today. But at the time, thanks to Una's seemingly endless funds, they were able to entertain extensively, hosting large shooting parties. They'd also hold balls in the house for the likes of the Galway Blazers, perhaps Ireland's best-known hunt. And then they'd attend similar events held by neighbours in their own houses around the district. Although, as can be seen from these cuttings, such occasions were not without their hazards. Incidentally, the bag that was stolen from Una in the 1930s would today be worth well over £15,000. When the bag was eventually recovered, the man who'd purloined it offered the time-honoured explanation, "I had drink taken." The Oranmore and Browns also spent some time in Dublin, where they could stay in Una's old family home, Glenmaroon by the Phoenix Park, or they could go to Luggala in County Wicklow. You'll remember that following the marriage of the Oranmore and Browns in 1937, Una's father had bought and given her Luggala as a wedding present, and here she entertained a group very much made up of her London friends. As can be seen in this page from a photograph album, where the guests included the actress and artist model Iris Tree, with both her former and present husbands, and Richard Wyndham, otherwise known as Whips, because, according to Cyril Connolly, he'd been one of Europe's greatest flagellists. It was a colourful crowd, as I'm sure you'll agree, and it very much set the tone for Una's time as hostess at Luggala. Now, you'll remember that Una already had 2 children from her first marriage, and Dominic had 5 from his. But in June 1939, she gave birth to their own first child, a son who was named Garrett. He would grow up to love Luggala just as much as did his mother, and ultimately he'd become responsible for preserving the place for the future. Una absolutely adored children, and when war broke out, she gathered as many of them as possible, including her sister Eileen's 2 daughters, Eileen having moved to the United States where she spent the next 5 years, and settled down with the whole brood in Castlemacgarrett. All ought to have been well for Una, but trouble lay ahead. In 1943, the son of her first marriage, Gay Kindersley, was ready to enter secondary school, and Una, fearful of what would happen if he moved to England, which was then being bombed by the Germans, enrolled him in an establishment in Dublin. However, his father Philip, then in a prison camp in Italy, wanted the boy to go to Eton as he had done. A legal battle ensued, one that went all the way to the Irish Supreme Court. Ultimately, Una lost the case, and Gay was taken to England by his paternal grandparents. The stress of it all meant that Una lost a newborn baby. Finally, in 1945, another much-desired son was born, and he was given the name Tara. Here he is with his siblings at Luggala, being held by his half-sister Tessa Kindersley. A year later, when they were in the west of Ireland, there was an outbreak of diphtheria in the region, and Una arranged to have all the children inoculated. Tragically, Tessa suffered an adverse reaction to the inoculation, went into anaphylactic shock, and was dead within a couple of hours. She and the unnamed baby, who died in 1944, were both buried at Luggala under simple tombs. These are located close to Loch Tay, beside a small 18th century temple, which Una had rescued from another site and re-erected here. Let's leave it at this point for the moment, and perhaps I can return to the subject of Una and her tenure at Luggala in another series. But before I go, just to go back to the portrait with which I started, the picture painted by Philip de Laszlo of Una in 1931. Having been seemingly missing for 25 years, as I mentioned, it turned up a few months ago in a house in Atlanta, Georgia, the contents of which were being offered for sale. When the auction came, the picture had an estimate of $30,000 to $50,000, but eventually it fetched $324,500. That's quite a difference from the £1,500 paid when it was first painted. And so we leave the subject for the time being. Thank you so much for watching The Irish Aesthete. I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Goodbye.